Thank you for making the time to be here. It really does matter the degree to which we apply ourselves to something. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was the great writer and poet and thinker of 100 some odd years ago, once noted that nothing great was ever achieved without enthusiasm. And one of the things I love about Secretary Ramsey is he's brought a level of enthusiasm to the whole idea of workforce development in a way that really does separate Kentucky from a number of other states. There are many people pursuing this. There is not a governor you will talk to, and I talk to most of them, some of them very frequently. The number one issue for every single governor is workforce development. Number one issue. Everybody has other issues at any point in time, and certainly those in Texas and Florida, as we know, have had some very significant issues on their plates that crop up. But those will be eventually addressed, and that will go back to really having to focus on workforce development. It is a need for employers everywhere. Where is the workforce of the 21st century going to come from? Patterns are changing among young people. People hear about the millennial generation, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an expert on it, although I do have 9 children, some of whom are probably the tail end of the millennial generation, and then I have a whole bunch of whatever the next generation is. But I will say this. It's a different idea. The idea that you go to a company and you work there for 20, 30, 40 years and that's it. People have more jobs now and less careers. Now, I don't know if that's good. I don't know if it's bad. It just seems to be something that we've seen. So how do we train people for the jobs that exist? That's really the $64,000 question. That's really what the purpose of this summit is about. How do we train people for jobs that need to be done and jobs that are going to continue to be done and need to be done as we move forward? I've shared often, and I think it's true enough, that there's an old saying from scriptures, without vision, the people will perish. I think it's very true. I think it's true spiritually. I think it's true for a nation. I think it's true for a state. I think it's true for any company, for that matter. If you don't know what your vision is, what your mission statement is, your odds of attaining it are certainly limited. So my vision, I've been very clear, my vision for Kentucky is a simple one. Let me ask you all a question, and some of you may have heard me ask this question before, but I will ask anyone here, feel free to shout it out, if you wanted to engineer and manufacture something to the highest degree of excellence, engineered, manufactured to the highest degree of excellence, you had to do it in continental Europe. In some country in continental Europe, where would you start? Germany. 100% of the time. 100% of the time that I've asked that question, that's what people think of. Does that mean you couldn't do it well in Italy or Switzerland or the Netherlands? Of course not. There's tremendous abilities to engineer and manufacture in all those places and others as well. But Germany instinctively is at the top of people's mind when they think of high-quality engineering and manufacturing. And yet Europe is a fairly good-sized continent. Now, how is it that they own it when, in fact, they're clearly not the only place that you could do it? Is because they have focused with a sense of urgency for decades on training a workforce that delivers that in people's minds. And it comes out of an apprenticeship program. Secretary Ramsey, Secretary Heiner, myself, and some others from this administration traveled a few months ago and spent some time in Switzerland and Germany looking at the apprenticeship program. What can we learn from those that we would hope to emulate? If I were to ask you the same question, if you wanted to engineer and manufacture something to the highest degree of excellence, you had to do it in a single state in America, where would you go? I won't make you shout it out, but I'll bet you in this room we'd get 5, 10, 15 different answers. One of which I hope would be Kentucky, but truth be told, you could come up with any number of a dozen other answers, all of which would be as defensible, as arguably correct as Kentucky is. What that tells me is that nobody owns it. Nobody owns it like Germany owns it. And if nobody owns it, that means it's available to be owned. And we're going to own it. It's not that complicated. So I'm telling you. So I'm a guy with a simple vision. I hope you've figured this out. And my vision is that Kentucky becomes, straight up, without question, instinctively in people's minds, the center of engineering and manufacturing excellence in America. Period. Doesn't mean we'll be the only place, doesn't mean we'll be the place everyone should come. But when people think we want to engineer and manufacture something to the highest degree of excellence, where should we go? I want as instinctively as you thought of Germany for people to think of, well, obviously we need to look at Kentucky. Does that mean they'll all come here? Of course not. But if they come here first, do you think we get our fair share? You bet. And that's really the whole point. It was made mention, and indeed it's true, that Norton's has started an apprenticeship program and indeed just graduated 125 nurses in an apprenticeship class. And I was over there the day that they were graduating, and it was the level of excitement, the energy, the enjoyment of the class, but also the excitement on the part of the people that were in the administration, because for those of you in healthcare, you know it's not easy to find people who are trained and ready to fill the gap. Demographics we're aging, we're getting older, we have needs. Something happened to me recently that I don't even want to tell you about, but I found myself on receiving end. I actually dislocated my shoulder, which if any of you have ever done that, I wouldn't suggest it as a way to spend any portion of your day. But for several hours I was in dire need, and there was somebody with good medical skills who took care of me ultimately. And these are the kind of things that, frankly, we need more of. And so whatever the path that has been traditional may be changing. Apprenticeships is where we're going. I happen to be the owner of a little company that was started by my great-great-great-grandfather in 1832. He and his brother were indentured servants, which at that time was a form of apprenticeship. They basically were 2 of 9 kids, and I don't know why those 2, but they were basically given to a fellow who had some skills and was trusted to bring them home after a year or 2 and, well fed and well maintained and with some knowledge. And so they were basically indentured servants. They went away, they went to another state, and they worked for this fellow and they learned a skill, and they were then able to come back and deploy that skill. The apprenticeship program is a modern day equivalent of the very same thing. Very same thing. We are basically training young people for jobs that actually exist. We have our Secretary of Education here, Stephen Pruitt, and I'll tell you, we're doing a lot on the education front in this state as well. But I'll tell you one thing, this is a man responsible for how we get people from K through 12. We think about what comes in the post-secondary years. It's interesting because this idea and this notion we've perpetrated for a long time is that everybody immediately needs to go on to college is something we need to rethink. Doesn't mean everyone shouldn't consider that as a possibility, but if in Kentucky, and indeed it is the case now, that we spend 60%, which is awesome, 60%, of our young people immediately go on to some kind of post-secondary school. And that's encouraging, and that should make us feel happy, except for the fact that only 20% actually come out the other end of the tunnel at any point in time with a post-secondary degree. That shouldn't make us feel as happy. It means that we're sending a lot of people down a path that at least at that point in time is not the right path for them. And we need to rethink how we are preparing people for working in the 21st century. There's 190,000 jobs, probably more, but about 190,000 jobs that are open jobs in Kentucky alone right now. I mean, how is it that we have this disconnect between people who want to work and jobs that are desperate for someone to do them? It's because we're not training people for the jobs that exist. And the apprenticeship program, whether it's in the medical field, whether it is in manufacturing, whether it's in high tech, whatever the case might be, is increasingly becoming clear to be the path through which Kentucky will lead the nation. Many states are pursuing this. I would dare to say that even now we are as good as anyone on this front. But I would hesitate to say we're better head and shoulders above everybody, but we're going to be. And indeed, we've got the right guy who's already himself head and shoulders above everybody to lead the charge. And I mean it sincerely. This is a guy with a sense of passion and urgency, and great things are going to be accomplished because his enthusiasm is contagious. And I'm grateful to Derek Ramsey. I'm grateful to Secretary Ramsey and Secretary Heiner, Secretary Gill and Vivek. We've got folks, Mike Nemes, who works with Derek in the Labor Department. We've got a lot of people focused on bringing this forward in Kentucky in a way that will be not only to our advantage, and believe me, when I'm out talking, and you can bet I don't know if you've all seen the chart. Somebody, if you haven't, just Google it up. The chart, it's a picture of America, and it says every city in America that says they're the right place for Amazon's next headquarters. Have you seen that map? It's a map of the United States. It's just nothing but dots. So everybody, of course, wants the next Amazon headquarters. What does Amazon want? They want a place where they can go and hire 50,000 people. Everybody wants the Toyota Mazda plant to be in their state. What does Toyota and Mazda want? They want to go where they can employ thousands and thousands of highly trained people. So believe me, we're in the running for that. But one of the things that gives me a sense of comfort that we have a good shot on these fronts is the fact that indeed we do have a good program. And we have both a good post-secondary education system, but we also have a good technical school system. And this is something that some of us of a certain age, we used to call it the VOC-Tech, and that was considered sort of a pejorative term. Well, if you don't go to college, you have to go to the VOC-Tech. Well, where I grew up, most kids didn't even go to the VOC-Tech. But I'll tell you what, we need to get back to this idea. I'll close with one little comment, and that is this. There is not far from here, just 20 miles to the east, there is a company in Shelbyville that makes all the ribs, among other things, for the Boeing 787, the Dreamliner. One of the most advanced, arguably the most advanced commercial aircraft in the world. And those titanium ribs that are made through a fabrication process that is innovative and novel in ways that have never previously been done, that is overseen by a gentleman who grew up here in Kentucky, didn't go to college. Every one of those ribs costs $10,000, and there's multiple ribs in a single aircraft, and they're made just up the road. And the guy who oversees that project came out of high school and just wanted to work, had skills, had knowledge, ended up going to work. He has ultimately gone back to school. 10 plus years later, he went back and got engineering degrees that were needed to continue to advance. We need to rethink the methodology. It doesn't mean that the path is wrong. It's just the point at which someone gets on a path or what circuitous route they might take to get on the proper path is something we need to rethink. The very final thing I'll say is this. It isn't just the kids that need to go on field trips. It's awesome that we introduce young people to this idea of advanced manufacturing, additive manufacturing, 21st century manufacturing, which is much more likely to involve somebody using mechatronics and using a laptop and an iPad than it is somebody with a wrench. That's just reality. We need to start to rethink who are the people that are going on these trips. And I would encourage parents to start going. I would encourage superintendents, and I would encourage principals and teachers and guidance counselors to actually start going on these trips and to learn the difference between what's in their minds in some respects and what's actually out there. Kentucky needs it. America needs it. The future of our economic development needs it. I thank you for having a heart for this, for a passion for this. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart as well. I'm excited to be able to share it with so many people in this administration. And I thank those of you for being here who are going to help us make it happen, because it's a two-way street. Some of you need this as much as anyone else. And so we're here to work with you. Our government, our administration is open to help you. And through Secretary Ramsey and his team, we will do whatever we can to make sure that a generation from now and a whole lot sooner, if we have anything to say about it, that when people say we want something engineered and manufactured to the highest degree of excellence in America, where are we going to start? We're going to go to Kentucky. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.